So if you could, automatic, Mr. Automatic. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. And so welcome to session 9, the Friday recap. Can you believe, can you really believe that we are
Mm,
halfway through this
yeah,
program?
yeah,
Maybe some
wow.
of you think, boy, it's been a drag, but I think we've had some pretty fantastic speakers. And here I am sitting realizing that we are halfway through. And we still got a lot more to share with you, but I hope it has been rewarding for you. So, in terms of today's recap, I want to share with you the video that I tried to share on Monday. I think it's going to work today, but technology isn't always cooperative. Then I pulled out some slides from our 4 presenters that on Monday and Wednesday this week, and I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of what I took away from it in terms of highlights. But as I mentioned to you on Wednesday, I want to ask each one of you what you took away from your anything in those 2 sessions, something that really hit home for you. Maybe it was a surprise, maybe it was something that you never thought of before. Did it give you some ideas that maybe could apply to back home in your country? A very quick look forward to next week. And then, as I said earlier, I'm really looking forward to the Brazilian presentation, Agriculture Back Home. And then I'm assuming Ro will be joining us, and is going to give us the Rotary message for the day. We'll do a quick wrap up, and I'll call it the veterans. I don't like to call them us oldies, but let's be honest with you, we are. But we will leave and leave it to the young ones to have just a fun and fellowship event and just kind of get to know each other a little bit better. So that'll be in the social time. So we'll leave. We'll stop the recording. We'll make sure if Rose on board that she will kind of facilitate that section. So let's. Oh, I think we can go. So let's listen to this video. Why I'm really excited to share this with you. There are a number of farmers that'll be talking across Alberta. I don't know if there's any outside of Alberta, but most of them are from Alberta. They're, I would call them everyday grassroots farmers, but they're also leaders. They're leaders in the agriculture industry. And for me, I've had the privilege of working with them and working for them when I was executive director of the Alberta Wheat Commission. And so I just want to let them share their story of farming and how it's kind of evolved, and the type of things that they're doing to make their business sustainable and moving forward. So enjoy. Everybody here okay?
Farm sustainability means more and better food for you and your family. Food you can feel good about, knowing where it comes from. Here's how Alberta farmers grow food sustainably.
Everybody's heard of the dirty 30s. Well, part of that is the tillage that they were doing exposed the soil to the elements, and the dry winds blew the topsoil away. That is far less likely to happen with the way that we farm now, because we leave that soil untouched and the straw on the surface attached.
One of the biggest sustainability changes we've made over time has been the adoption of tilling practices. And now we try to work the land as little as possible and let the roots kind of do the tilling for us. And we try to let nature work the ground itself.
20 years ago, we started soil sampling. So we would go out and take core samples out of each field and send those away to a lab, and then we would get an analysis on that soil and tell us what nutrients are there. And so we would be able to fertilize accordingly for whichever crop we wanted to grow. We've got 3 different nutrients that we put on this field. So the really bright white, that's urea or nitrogen. Phosphate is the brown. And then you see some of these kind of little bit off-white, that's the sulfur that we put on. And because we can apply each nutrient individually, we can just apply what's needed. It's as good as it was before.
We have an 8-year crop rotation, and that really promotes good biodiversity. Because of our soil health, our weeds are decreasing, our diseases are decreasing, which gives us an ability to use less chemicals on our farm.
The progress we're making is towards using fewer products. We have been able to use fewer pesticides and manage them more efficiently. Even in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge change in disease pressure, for example, and insect pressure, just given the practices we've employed.
One of the big changes we made on our farm this past couple of years is putting in double-walled fuel tanks. They're a lot safer for the environment because they're double-walled and all self-contained. And on top of that, they have automatic shut-off nozzles, so the possibility of any spillage is eliminated.
In the area of social and human capital, our farm employs a variety of full-time and part-time people. They need to be properly trained to make sure that the employees are safe and can run the equipment appropriately. We like to make sure they know where the first aid and fire protection equipment is as well.
Every time our equipment hits the field, it's recorded in our on-tractor or on-combine equipment, and it's data logged. Based on that information, we can find out how much food we've taken off, what it's taken to produce that food, and we can plan for future years so that we can produce more and better food.
I define sustainability as continual improvement. So I'm always trying to improve on what I'm doing, make sure that I'm always learning and leaving everything behind as good or better than the way I found it.
General consumers need to know that we're sustainable. It's important that they know and understand that we care about our lands, and we are trying to do our best to maintain the ecosystem for future generations.
Our farm's been here for 3 generations, and if we weren't sustainable in those generations, we wouldn't be able to maintain our business, because there's so much to sustainability that includes protecting the environment and trying to be as efficient as we can.
You know, we've implemented lots of different practices on our farm that we believe makes it viable, and that in turn is creating healthier, more nutritious crops, which has been the goal of farmers for hundreds of years, to promote healthy, nutritious crops for consumers.
Consumers need to know that we're sustainable so that they have some trust in what we're doing. This is our backyard, and we're very engaged in what we're doing on the farm and trying to make it always better.
We want people to feel confident that we're doing a good job, that we're looking after our land well, we're producing food that is healthy and nutritious for them to eat.
It's important that consumers know that Alberta farmers are sustainable, because that shows them that they can trust their food supply and that it's going to be there for their children and their children's children.
Did anybody notice the Alberta wheat logo on some of the shirts? I don't know if you noticed it or not, but there was several of them there that they've all been members of the Alberta Wheat Commission, and it was rather an interesting experience. They wanted a logo that they could brand, and so I brought a marketing company in, and that design actually originated with those growers. They had a couple of things to look at, and they selected that one because they thought that's what they were all about. So it was, none of them had ever done that before, and so there's a certain amount of pride, I can say, in having that having that logo. So now I'd like to kind of just fairly quickly go through some of the highlights that I took away from it. And if you remember, on Monday we had Hector and Jeremy. Hector covered the insect management, and Jeremy covered disease management. So I'm going to start with those two, just to go through a few of the slides, and then we'll go to the Wednesday session. And then at the conclusion, that's when I'm going to ask you, each of you, to tell me what one thing really struck with you that you learned this past week. So, do you remember this slide? Cover crops, trap crops, if you like, and this was controlling the lygus bug. And the strip around the outside was a different type of, was a mustard, I believe, or it was at least a Brassica napus. And the greener stuff in the inside of the field was Argentine Brassica, Brassica campestris on the outside, Brassica napus on the inside. And so the intent is that it traps the bugs. They feed on this stuff that we don't care about, and it leaves the rest of the field alone, and they don't migrate all that far. We learned about how they can control natural insects that are predating on the crops through natural enemies. And we talked about predators, and they gave some examples of predators. Then there are the parasitoids. These are things like parasites that attack the insect and kill it. Sometimes it's through the eggs, and sometimes it's just through a stinging. And then, of course, we can work with fungi, bacteria, and viruses to control insects. All good examples, and he's given some examples. Bacillus thuringiensis has been around probably 40 years, and it was one of the first biological insecticides. Very safe on humans. It's not like a hard chemical pesticide. Then we heard about conservation management and the practice of integrated crop management. And in fact, I think every one of our 4 presenters this past week touched on integrated crop management or integrated insect, disease, or weed management. And he's given some examples of what you can do by including perennial legumes in a rotation, select varieties or crops resistant to pest, spray only if absolutely necessary, and I can tell you that most farmers like to do that because they are relatively expensive, a high cost for the farming inputs. And of course, if there are beneficial insects present that are not harming the crop but are helping with things like pollination, allow them to thrive. Don't spray them when they're at their peak. Otherwise, you miss an opportunity here, and you can see a yield reduction.
Rick,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the text is really blurry. We can only read, we can read conservation practices, but it's really hard to read the actual text in your presentation.
I can't get it any bigger than that, I don't think.
Can you reduce it? Maybe it's too big. Can you reduce it down one?
Too big. It's just that the resolution of your camera isn't very good, so that it's not readable, Rick.
So I think if you reduce it down, it might be better.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Little bit. Still not really.
I'm not sure why it's so bad. But
well, that's getting better. Do that one more time, whatever you just did.
There, and that's a little better.
At least that's legible at least now.
That's readable.
That's
good. Let me see if I, what if I go,
no, it was better before. Oh, no, it was better before.
Was it?
No.
Well,
you had it down before you made it 100%. It was okay. Whatever, two changes ago.
I think it's the internet.
Might be.
Could be.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
No.
You
can read the
it's clear on my screen.
Oh, it's not coming through clear on our side. Like I can read use a trap crop to concentrate pest or post pest, but I can't read the next thing.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad. I don't know what to do.
It was great a couple of adjustments ago. It was perfect. I don't know what you had it on, but it was really good.
So before you moved it to 100% in the Zoom, Rick, it was okay. So if you want to go down a little bit more, go down lower, I would think. No. Do you want to stop your screen share and just restart it and try that?
Ken?
Oh, there we go. Good. That worked.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay.
Carry on. So I don't know if you need to go back because the last slide wasn't, we couldn't read it, but or if you're okay with what you explained, but just you're good now.
Did you see that one clear enough or no?
Yeah, that's
Is it
good.
okay?
Everything is
Yeah,
good.
it's okay.
Okay, so we'll leave it on regular show here, so I'll just move it that way. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why. But I'm glad you brought it up because if you're looking like you're squinting, and I thought a few of you were squinting, trying to read it. So where did I go here? So practice integrated crop management. And, basically integrated crop management or weed or disease or insect management is basically looking at the tools that the farmer has in their toolbox that they can apply different tools to optimize the yield and optimize the control of any pest that's in that field, regardless if it's a weed, disease, or insect. Conservation practices use a trap crop. That was that first picture I showed you, and that was actually for the cabbage seed pod weevil. And that's the one that, drills into the pod, lays its egg, and then, a worm hatches and it consumes the inside of the pod and the seeds. And of course, you have a yield reduction, and then you have a quality reduction as well. Less tillage, low soil disturbance is key for certain parasitoids. Taller stubble, that also improves moisture conservation when we do get snow, and we hope we get snow. The stubble will trap that snow and allow it to melt slowly in the spring. Now, disease management, moving on to Jeremy's presentation. We learned about what he basically told us what he was going to tell us and what we hoped that we would learn from it. From the lens of a disease management, he shared with us what are the main diseases of wheat and barley that affect us in terms of yield or quality, main cultural management options, and we'll go into them in a little bit more detail, the main chemical management options, and the importance of scouting and decision making. So in other words, scouting for the insects or the disease and applying whatever control mechanism you use, whether it's chemical or cultural, at the right timing to get the best bang for your buck. This is something I think I really took home, was the disease triangle. So in the middle, you have the pathogen, the environment, the host interaction, and you need all three. If you have all three, or you minimize the impact of one of those, and weather is probably the most difficult one to manage, you basically can manage the disease progression. Tools, again, tools in the toolkit. We heard about variety selection, the importance of selecting a variety that perhaps has a greater inbred tolerance to these diseases or defense against them. Crop rotation, if you go continuous wheat, you can expect a buildup of diseases. So it's good to rotate with a wheat or a barley crop as a grass species with a dicot or broadleaf species like canola. Seed treatments can help protect the seed, allow it to germinate and emerge quicker and more uniform. And the nice thing about seed treatments is that it's a targeted chemical application. It's not like you're broadcast spraying it over the ground. So it basically really improves the standability and potentially the yield of any crop that's treated. And you're targeting seed-borne diseases and soil-borne diseases. Foliar fungicides are another tool, and then the importance of scouting. Going out walking your fields. Many farmers hire agronomists to go out and scout their fields for them and then give them a recommendation to ensure you get the right product or the right tool at the right time to get the best control. Another cultural aspect is through seeding. So you've heard some information about increasing your seeding rates to a certain level that you get the best competitive crop stand. Seeding depth, if you seed too deep, you need to seed into some moisture, hopefully. But if you seed too deep, it takes longer to emerge and it can cause delays and again yield at the end of the season. And getting the right fertilizer package based on soil tests into close to the seed so the seed can take advantage of it. Not too close, because things like nitrogen, you can only, I think it's a maximum of 8 pounds per acre of nitrogen with the seed. Otherwise, more than that, it can actually burn the seed or cause it to not germinate effectively. The scouting side of things, and I just mentioned field scouting, a lot of agronomists. Farming Smarter that we heard from the previous week, they do this as well, and most of our grower organizations actually have agronomists on staff to support their growers with things like disease identification, monitoring, field conditions, varieties, and all that sort of thing. And again, this is pulling it all together. So taking all of the tools, and I would suggest that every bullet you see on the slide there, crop rotation, residue management, healthy seeds, scouting, seed quality, seed management, fertility, variety selection, watching the weather, monitoring the weather, all of these things, you put the package together with the hope that you can optimize your yield and your quality at the end of the day. Now we move on to weed management, and this was with Dr. Bob Blackshaw. And he listed for us the top 10 weeds according to weed surveys, and this is across Western Canada, not necessarily just in Alberta, but you notice the one there, wild oats, it's bolded. It tends to be our number one weed problem, primarily because it, basically about 12 plants per square meter can reduce yields about 20%. So they're always trying to control that. Yep.
Sorry, Rick, it's gone fuzzy again. Do you want to try to exit and restart again?
You sure? Have you not been drinking too much there, Rob?
Is it just Margie for you too?
Is it?
You're muted, Margie.
I got a feeling whoever said it, I think it was.
Okay, there you go. You're good again. Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Hey, carry on.
It's fuzzy again. Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
So that's all of those weeds are a problem. They're the top 10. We got lots more than that farmers have to deal with, but these are the ones that if you're going to, Canada thistle is a perennial weed. And some of these weeds grow in different areas depending on the environment. I'll point out cleavers. Cleavers is a small seeded plant that moves through it. It's got barbs on the leaves, and as you walk through the field, you'll actually break the plant, and it'll drag into another area. The reason you don't want cleavers in your field, if you're going to grow canola, it's the same size as canola seed when it's harvested. So essentially, you can't, you don't want that in there because it's very difficult to separate cleaver seed from canola seed. There is technology that will do it, but why won't it go? We heard a little bit about weed resistance in Canada. Group 1, that's largely for the grass herbicides trying to control wild oats. And Group 2 is largely controls broadleaf weeds. And there are a whole number of groups, but he focused on those two because those are the ones that we've had a longer history of herbicide weed resistance in them. I think he mentioned that in any given population, there could be 0.0001% that actually have a natural resistance. And by continually using the same pesticide or same herbicide or chemical over and over, it can gradually select for more resistant populations. And so the idea is to largely for these, to control these, is to rotate with different mode of action chemicals. We learned a little bit about herbicide resistant crops, Liberty Link canola being probably one of the largest, as well as Roundup Ready. And pretty well all seed companies sell canola seed. There are some varieties that are not herbicide tolerant because there is still a market for herbicide, non-herbicide tolerant varieties. I was a bit surprised. Of course, I disappeared on Wednesday. I was a bit surprised that he mentioned that there's Clearfield in wheat, and I thought Canada had agreed or said that they were not going to put in any herbicide tolerance into wheat because of fear of losing market. 80% of what we produce in Western Canada, well, in Canada for that matter, whether it's a barley or wheat or canola or peas or pulse crops, 80% is exported somewhere in the world. Again, integrated weed management. And here Bob talks about combining several methods of weed control. Again, pulling all of the tools that we have in our toolbox to really help with competition and trying to manage it so that the weed populations are manageable over time. Putting it all together, and it's kind of what I call Rotary math sometimes, but it's taking all of the various practices again from the toolkit, and 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. I know it doesn't add up the way it should add up, but basically it's telling you that there's a bonus from combining several desirable practices in one field, and if you do it year after year, that basically gives you another bump in terms of benefit, both in terms of controlling the pest and in terms of increasing the yield. Very quickly, Rosemarie talked about biological weed control, and I sense, although I missed her presentation, I sensed there was a lot of interest in the biological control. She talked about the classical definition, so using a plant's natural enemies, whether it's an insect or a pathogen, to basically manage the population to levels. Doesn't mean it completely eliminates it or controls it, but it reduces it to a level where the population is not damaging the desired outcome, which typically would be yield. I didn't realize this, but apparently there's been 86 different species introduced in Canada, targeted at quite a few 34 targeted invasive plants. 68% of those that were released, and again, I want to make it clear, they were approved for release based on a lot of research over the years. 68% of them have become firmly established and are available as biological biocontrol agents. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I'm going to start. Who do I want to start with? Let me see. Because I'm going to ask everybody the question. I would appreciate it if we got everybody on now. Anybody? Any volunteers? Maria Amelia, you got a beautiful smile. Please tell us just one thing that you didn't know before or were surprised about. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, good night or good afternoon. The things that it surprised me the most are the pulling it all together, that kind of triangle. I didn't know much about these kind of things, or I only know about one pillar of the triangle, and I read yesterday and search for more information because it shocks me. And the other one is that the farmers really are doing conservation practice. And I'm realized that there is not only one way to do the conservation practice. You just have to apply of the needs of the people, like the community that works there. And I just search the conservation practice less tillages. I don't know if it sounds good. And the other one was a spray only in if absolutely necessary. So we have to take care of insects that needs to pollen. I don't know,
Pollinate.
pollinate.
Yeah.
And
Oh, good.
yeah, that's all.
So you mentioned the triangle was a bit of a surprise, and
Yeah.
you said you understood one part of the triangle. What was that part?
I only knew about the part of the environment.
Environment, yeah. So you realize that, I mean, in your country, you have to deal with rain,
Yeah,
temperature, you know, I mean,
yeah, most of temperature because my land is in a part of my department that the temperature goes like 40 or 41, and we don't have a lot of water, so we fight with that, and we have some disease, and yeah.
So is there some information that you learned that you think you could apply back home?
Yeah, yeah, like the
And
methodology, I really want to apply that triangle because I only knew one part, and I
very
want
good.
to apply methodology.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're
Vitor.
welcome.
Good evening, guys. I think one of the things that surprised me and I've never seen here in Brazil is the biological control with insects to weeds to control the population of weeds. Like here we have the biological control to diseases, to pests, but use insects to control weed, I've never seen here before.
And again, it could come to that triangle.
Yeah.
Whether there's, you know, do you have to bring in insects from outside, from somewhere else in South America? And that's always a challenge moving.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that's the main challenge to choose an insect to use like a biological control is you find the correct insect that will control the weed but won't bring problems to your main crop. It's a big challenge. And here in Brazil, we have many insects, like we are a tropical country, so we have many problems with insects. So here, I think it's more difficult to applicate this kind of management of practice.
I mean, it starts with, I would say, in any country, if it's seen as an option, an opportunity, it starts with doing research. Somebody has to do the research to support the release of that. You know, if it's a naturally occurring insect, that's one thing, but you still have to do the research to allow to prove a performance that it will work and not cause problems down the road later. You know, I don't know. Do you have locusts or grasshoppers in Brazil?
What? I didn't understand.
Locusts. Do you have
I don't.
locusts? I don't know. Wayne, do you know if they have locusts in Brazil? Do you know?
No, locust, well, the grasshoppers are typically a dryland issue,
Yeah.
in the northern Great Plains, they don't have, they have other pest issues. It's the killer bees, and there's a few other pests in Brazil down there. Disease is a big issue, but
Yeah.
the locusts are typically of the Great Plains, the
Yeah.
grasshoppers, and those of you that experience that, and we've had some years where it wiped out crops, all the gardens in the cities, and people couldn't even drive on the highways in Southern Alberta because the grasshoppers were so bad and greasy. But yeah, Brazil doesn't have the locust like we have. Africa, Northern Africa, it's very common, but not so much in the Southern Hemisphere.
These are insects that fly, and when they can move miles and miles, and they usually go in big swarms like bees. And when they land on a crop that they have an appetite for, they can clean the crop right down to the ground in literally hours. So thanks for that question, Vitor. I'm going to go down to Marceli now. I'm just following the Hollywood squares here. So.
Hi, good evening. For me, I really enjoyed Rose's presentation. It's very interesting biological control. I don't know biological control. Yes, I learned a lot. Both performance were wonderful. 2 performance. Yes, that's it.
Do you understand that? Do you know the expression "there's no silver bullet"? Do you understand that expression? It's one that we have here. It basically says if you have a target that you want to control, usually there's not just one thing that will control it. You need to put the tools from the toolbox together. So when it comes to biological control, it can work very effectively, but it's rare that it'll work on its own. It needs other inputs to help. Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Brady.
Hello, everyone. For me, actually, Rick, I like that you just said the silver bullet, because that came to mind actually just before you said that. And I go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And Rose's presentation, I'll speak on that one first and then go to the others. A nice reminder with it is that pest control in agriculture, it's not always something that I can think of will be handled immediately. It won't happen in a 1 week span that I'll see a result. Allow patience and a lot more patience on top of that patience for some of these pests to be controlled. And I think that was maybe not her direct message she was trying to say, but something that I took out of that. Hectares, I really enjoyed, Rick, you showed the photo of the trap crops, and I like that idea and looking more into that, especially if it's possible to, I think the one photo you showed, that was seeded in the fall time, but is it possible to seed a week prior to seeding the rest of your crop? Or what ways are you able to utilize that in some way? And I hope to look into that a bit more. And it could be a useful thing for my own family farm to try to consider. Jeremy's presentation, we talked about that disease triangle, and I've heard that explained before as also a disease pyramid, and the last component being time, and having a time component of also maybe lesser importance to the 3 pillars, but maybe something to consider. And it's always interesting to need all 3 of those in order for something to happen. And finally, I have it pulled up. Dr. Bob's presentation. I like that 1 + 1 + 1 is 5. It's use multiple things for your own advantage, and don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That's perfect message. Thank you, Brady. Carlos.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Carlos.
Yeah, so actually something that they have already mentioned is the biological control. And I was thinking about it, and actually here people, I haven't seen it, but I've heard that some people is using sheep in order to control weeds. So because they eat it, So they kind of, a lot of shifts, weeks before they're going to use that specific area, and they kind of control the weeds. So I've heard about it. And regarding the locust that you mentioned, here in the area where I live, the crops that are most common are rice and corn. So those are crops that are being actually affected by locusts, and people is kind of afraid of this insect, because yeah, it's so effective controlling the weeds, but in these cases, in a few hours, can just eat a whole crop in a few hours. So people here is kind of afraid about it. But I'm really curious about looking for some specific biological control with insects or other species here in Colombia that may apply, because locust is actually pretty common, but the government is actually kind of paying full attention because those are the most important crops here that could be affected by that specific insect. So yeah, I'm really curious about looking specifically in this area in Colombia, what are the biological control that could be applied. And in that investigation process, that is something that was really interesting to me, that mentioned one of the in one of the sessions, was that it has to be economically viable. And that is something that in that investigation process, sometimes when you're I don't know, an engineer, you usually think about effectiveness, but not usually in that it could be actually applied in a crop. Because as a farmer, you need to think about it, if it's economically viable, or I prefer just to use a different practice. So that is something that actually kind of hit me, and I'm really curious about investigate about it in Colombia, and actually see how to apply something that is economically viable, but at the same time that could be like a better option for controlling weeds or other diseases.
You've made a very good point, because I think it's a balance between the desired outcome, whether it's typically yield and quality of the crop, the seed that's harvested in the end, and sustainability and economics. It's another triangle.
Yeah.
And 100% control may not be cost effective, but maybe 80% is. So you just have to know the tools and how you can balance them. You mentioned sheep. I think you said that can eat or digest weeds. In Calgary, an area, we have. I'm trying to think the name of the weed. I think it might be. It's a noxious weed, or it's a weed that's identified that is a no-no. And there are goat herders or sheep herders, that's all they'll eat, and they'll go in and clean it right up, and that's a biological control. It's just it's an animal doing it. So if you've got goats and sheep, or you've got cattle, all of those can work. It typically, though, I mean, with cattle, you got to be very careful of what weeds they eat, because if they eat a noxious weed, they can get sick and die, of course. So.
Oh,
yeah, that's good point. Tulio, I think you're up.
Well, I was going to say the same thing as Victor said, but the other thing I found very interesting is about the resistance, because here it is a big problem we had in the field, because there is a lot of the weeds there is starting getting resistance, and it's a new challenge for us, for the agronomists to do something about it, because I think it's not only the misusing of the products, but maybe we need new products or doing like the biocontrol or something. But uh, as Victor said, this is one way of the biocontrol with insects to weed that I never seen before, but it is a way, and that is one thing I think it was pretty interesting for me.
Can you tell me, Tulio, when you said weed resistance is a problem, is there a particular weed that's a problem there?
Well, there is like two or three. Maybe I can see the name and send in the chat, because it's a different kind of names that you showed before, I guess. But there's like some weeds that we are having a lot of problems.
If you could send or put in the chat the scientific name of the
Yeah,
weed,
sure.
that's the genus species. That might help us because common names for common weeds can be different in every country.
Yeah.
You know, and so that, because I would be interested in knowing. I think we've had people. Did you go down on any weed resistance work, Wayne, when you were down there?
Oh, I wasn't aware of any, that wasn't the issue when I was down there, but that was 30 years ago, 25 years ago. So it may have changed, but the weed control issues weren't serious. It was mainly soil degradation and crop residue management and erosion control, at least in Brazil and Argentina. In Chile, I didn't spend that much time in Chile or Colombia, Bolivia, but in Argentina and Brazil, it was mainly land management issues that were the problem.
I saw Digitaria. I'm familiar with that one. We have that in Eastern Canada. I believe it's a grass species. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I don't know the other one, but I'll do a little bit of searching and get an answer back to you. But yeah, weed resistance is certainly more prevalent in more countries today than it was 20 years ago. I think the first documented case was actually in Australia, then the US, and then, of course, Canada. And as you heard Bob Blackshaw say, wild oats are resistant to both Group 1 and Group 2 herbicides. And it's largely for, that a great product comes out and does a magnificent job of controlling a weed, and then they use it continuously, and naturally it selects out for resistance over time. So it's a matter of rotating those different modes of action that are still effective. Don't kill the crop, of course. Yeah. Good. Anybody else have any questions, comments you'd like to make? Harvey, what have you learned? Where did he go?
I learned I should have been here Wednesday instead of playing with my grandkids. But that was actually, I was going to comment to all of the students. I was talking to Vito last night, and he talks that he may go into graduate school. But I think some of the comments is there's really a lot of potential for for all of you to go into research. And, just listening to you, Tulio, about the resistant weeds, I could see you in research trying to work on that over the next 10 years to benefit everybody. And Vito mentioned that yesterday as well. So, yeah, I really enjoyed listening to the courses, and I got to figure out what kills my gladiolas, but I don't know if it's spot bright or not, but it sure looked like it on the picture. So. But yeah, it's been really good. I've enjoyed it. And the comments from the students are really good. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Harvey. Tulio, if you want further information on weed resistance, I can connect you with some Bob Blackshaw would be one, but there are some what I call weed resistant experts right around the world that could help you with the understanding of the process, the concept. Brady, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to mention to everybody. Hector actually mentioned to us this one scientific paper that he referenced in his presentation called "The Necessary Marriage Between Ecology and Agriculture." And I just wanted to encourage everyone to give that a read. It was actually an interesting take. I know it's around 30 years old now, but it was quite an interesting read to compare the two, and interesting points were argued. And so, yeah, just an encouragement from as a step further into Hector's presentation.
Super, thanks, Brady. Okay, I think we're going to move on now. I found this conversation quite informative, and I want to thank every one of you for asking a question or learning, sharing with you what you took away from this week's program. And I think we'll move on to the next slide. Which is really quick, if I can get to it. There we go. So we're moving on. Next week, it's all about machinery and technology, and we've got a speaker, Dr. Thomas Nielsen. He's with the Workland School of Agricultural Technology at Olds College. I've seen his PowerPoint slide presentation, and I know you're going to have your eyes open when we move on to that. So I'm going to again stop sharing, and I'm going to invite our Brazilian colleagues to share with us a little bit about agriculture in your part of the world. So I don't know who's leading it, but jump in.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this presentation where we're gonna talk about the agriculture in Brazil. I'm going to share my screen this moment. Okay.
Oh, I love the crop. I love the crop in that picture.
Okay. Can you see my screen? That's okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. As I said before, today our Brazil team will talk a little about agriculture in your country. I will bring you a bit of history and types of cultivation. Vitor will talk about coffee production, and Tulio will talk about your research and innovation. Brazil has 214 million people and has 80,516,000 square kilometers of territorial extension. It has 83,400,000 hectares of cultivated area. Some crops in the country are coffee, orange, sugarcane, soy, corn, cotton, peanuts, rice, oats, canola, rye, barley, beans, sunflower, castor beans, sorghum, 18, soy and corn correspond to 90% of Brazilian agriculture production. Brazil is the third largest producer of fruit in the world. It's very interesting. With about 45 million tons per year. Most of this production is turned to the domestic consumer market. Only 2.5% is exported. The Brazilian vegetable market is high diversified and segmented, with production volume concentrated in 6 species: potato, tomato, watermelon, lettuce, onion, and carrot. With family farm accounting for more than half of production. Domesticating native species such as the guarana tree, so that they are more productive and resistant to diseases, is again from agriculture research. We also have acai, fruit grown in the Brazilian Amazon region. It is delicious and very consumed by all Brazilians. It can be consumed in many ways, like ice cream, for example, small fin, along with other fruits. One of the characteristics of family farming is production from small farmers with greater productive diversity, where the family normally has the role of owner, manager, and is also responsible for all production and marketing logistics. Brazil has a great diversity of fruit cultivation. It is difficult to cover them all, okay? But here are some: orange, bananas, cocoa, cashews, and grapes. Brazil is the fourth largest banana producer in the world. Among the most exported fruits by Brazil in 2021 are mangoes, melons, grapes, walnuts, and chestnuts, lemons, and limes. We are very happy to be able to eat all these varieties of fruits here in my country. This map shows a little in which regions are cultivated. In the north, palm oils is cultivated, a palm tree of African origin, from whose fruits 2 types of oils can be extracted: pulp oil and almond oil, both with wide food and industrial use. In the northeast, we have the cultivation of Babasu. The Babasu is a type of palm found in several areas of Latin America. And in Brazil, it occurs mainly in Mato Grosso, Tocantins, Maranhão, and Piauí. From Babasu, everything is used. For example, from the Babasu mesocarp flour, bread, biscuits, cakes, and many other delicious foods are made. Coconut husk, properly prepared, provides an efficient charcoal, a source of fuel in several regions of northeastern Brazil. The Babasu production chain is based on primary extractivism. I think so, the word is extractivism, with the collections of coconuts right after the fruits fall, carried out mostly by traditional peoples and communities and small family farms. In addition to Babasu, cotton, pine nuts, and castor beans are produced in the Northeast. In the Midwest, we have cotton and soy as the main source. In the Southeast, we have peanut production. And in the South, we have sunflower, poultry, and swine cultivation. In this graph, we have the gross value of production in Brazil between 2010 and 2021. First, there is soy, followed by beef and corn. I put the translation, sorry, next to it, so you can follow along. I want to point out that we had reduction in Arabica coffee production due to the negative biennial cycle of Arabica coffee, which alternates years of high and low productivity and the impact of the drown-out. Yeah. The weather conditions at the beginning of the cycle were unfavorable. And mainly in relation to the rents being lower than expected in several cough-producing regions. Okay. No. Okay. This graph demonstrates Brazilian production in exported in the 2020 world ranking. Brazil was the world's largest exporter of soy, coffee, orange juice, sugar, chicken, and beef. And it was considered the fourth largest exporter of agricultural products in the world. And soja, and soy, coffee, orange juice, and sugar is a major world producer. Yes. Challenge of agriculture in Brazil, in my opinion. Okay. What I have said so far represents and only a part of all agriculture in your country. My colleagues will explore a little more, as Brazil is a continental, tropical, and continental tropical country with numerous varieties of crops. It also presents numerous challenges to be overcome. Here, I will mention some of them. Access to new technologies in the field is a challenge. And updating and improvement of technical knowledge by producer. Hiring specialized labor, find qualified human capital in the field is a major dilemma in the sector. Firstly, there is the constant social phenomenon of the migration of the rural population to the big cities, drastically reducing the amount of available labor. Second, we have the lack of technical training for workers. Increasingly, agribusiness adopts new tools and sophisticated agricultural machinery to increase productivity. But the human capital found is often not able to operate these technologies and also does not have the necessary investment to obtain them. Increase in productivity and increase in agriculture land. As well as the integration and intensification of activities using integrated methods to control pests, diseases, weeds, and nematodes. These are challenges that Brazil needs to overcome because the profile of the Brazilian producer is very diverse from small to large producer, and production scales are also different. I believe that Brazil has enormous potential to improve even more as a world producer with sustainability and quality. Yes, thank you for everyone's attention. Victor will continue our presentation, please. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone again. So I'll talk a little bit about the coffee production here in Brazil. I'll try to show an overview of our coffee here, our coffee crop. So here we have two graphics. The first we can see how we can see the biggest producers in the world, and we can see that Brazil is the biggest. We are the leader of the rank. We produce twice as much as Vietnam, the second. And one interesting thing here is that the South America have a big potential. We are the biggest producers, like Peru, Colombia, Brazil. We represent a lot in the coffee market. And here in the other graphic, we can see the biggest consumers in the world. And one thing that is very interesting, that the biggest consumers are North countries like Europe in general, United States, Japan, Russia, Canada is here too. And one thing that we can see here is the producers produce to export. Just Brazil is here. Brazil is the third in consumer, but and the first in production. So we can see it. We produce here to export the majority of our coffee. Move on, please. And the distribution of the coffee here in Brazil. Here we have the regions that we produce coffee, and here in the number one is the region that has the biggest production here in Brazil. It's called South Minas, and here is this place that I am living now, me and Tulio. Here is where are located our university. Here is the symbol of our university, called University of Lavras. And I think this is one of the reasons that I love coffee, that I'm so interested in coffee crop. So here, like if South Minas were a country, we would be one of the biggest producers in the world. Probably not. We produce more than Colombia here in South Minas. So our region is, I like to say, is a coffee region. Move on, please. So now I'll talk more about the coffee cycle and the management inside the farm. Here in the photos, we can see the seeds of the coffee, and with the seeds, we will develop the seedlings. The seedlings, we reproduce them, I don't know how to say in English, but similar to a greenhouse, I think, to the flowers. Have some similarity, but some difference too. And after the seedlings are produced, we will put on the soil. We will plant it on the ground. And here we have a woman planting. Here in Brazil, it's very common we use a handwork to plant coffee. We have some machines, but it's not so usual, because with the machines in the future, we can have some problems with the roots of the plant. So it can bring some problems in the future. So the farmers prefer to use the manual labor to plant our crop here, our coffee crop on the fields. And here, in the second and the third photo, we have a coffee crop with, I think, I don't remember when I took those photos, but I think they have 1 year and some months, I think, in my opinion. And in the first photo, we have a crop with 6 months. And one thing that I would like to draw your attention is this management that we are doing here and are growing with the farmers, is using this kind of cover crop inside the lines. Here we are using, it's usual to use some kind of grasses, because to control it's easier for us, because coffee is a dicot. So to apply herbicides on the grasses will be easier for us. And the management that we are doing in the second photo, we can see we use a machine to cut the grass, and the organic material we will put below the plant in the line. And it can bring for us many benefits, like we saw this week in the presentation. This organic material, this cover crop can help us to control weeds on the line of the coffee. It can help us to keep moisture on the soil and help us to grow the organic material on the soil. So use this kind of management bring to us in the coffee crop many benefits. And this kind of plants inside the line, it can attract some insects, some some natural enemies to the pests. So it is another advantage to use this kind of cover crops. Move on, please, Marceli. Here we have some adult plants, and in the first photo, we have a coffee crop on a field that, how can I say, in the same ground of level, it's a flat surface. And on the second, we have a crop in the mountain with a high slope. So we have many differences when we are management in the first photo and the second, because all of the management will be different. In the first photo, we can mechanize this crop. We can put machines to harvest, to apply fertilizer or other inputs, to spray. So here we can put machines, but in the second photo, we can't. We can't ride with a tractor on the lines here. It's impossible. So in the second, we just use manual labor, hand work. So it's a challenge for us. Like Marcel said, here, our country, we have many kinds of farmers with many crops, and in the coffee, it's not different. We have many kind of coffee farmers, sorry. And when we have a field like the second photo, the costs will be different than the first. So it's a challenge for us to planning our costs, to planning our incomes, because one area is different than other. And some farmers have the two fields with a high slope and with a flat surface in the same farm. So to these guys, it's very difficult to planning their costs, planning their incomes. And sometimes the final product is different too, because the microclimate in one is different than other. We have many different. And in the third photo, here is in my uncle's farm, in my hometown. We make an adapt in this machine. We use a tank here. And I don't know how to say in English, but we use this machine, this equipment to spray fungicide and insecticides on the coffee plant. Because here, this photo is on a mountain. And here we can use tractor, but other kinds of machines is impossible. So we adapted this machine to spray the product just on the border. And with the wind, the product will, how can I say, goes to all plants. Of course, it's not the best way to apply, but it makes our production cheaper. It's a way with this machine, we don't need to use manual labor, so it's cheaper for us. Move on, please, Marceli. Here we have the most beautiful season of the coffee crop, the flowering. And so, how can I say, how much more flowers we have, much fruits we will have in the future. So if a farmer saw this photo, this third photo, probably he will smile because we have many flowers here. And the season of the flowering here in Brazil is different than the Central America, the Colombia, and other countries. Here we have flowers on September, October, and November. So just on these months. So it's for us it's a good thing because Colombia they have many flowerings in all year. So they will have fruits all year. Here we can planning our harvest because we will have flowerings on September, October, November, and we will harvest in July, on May. So we can planning better than then. And here we have the fruits. After the flowers, we have fruits. And the first photo, we can see the green fruits. And the second, we have fruits in different states of different levels of maturation. We always want to catch, to harvest the red fruits, the cherries. We say cherries here. Because the flavor of these fruits are better to drink, to make better drinks. But here in Brazil, we don't we always try to harvest them, but sometimes we need to harvest the green too, the other fruits too, because here we use we try to harvest the plant just 1 or 2 times. So we use the machine, like we pass with the machine on the line just 1 or 2 times to harvest the fruits, because it's cheaper for us. If we harvest the same plant many times, the cost on the end will be so expensive. So we prefer sometimes to harvest green fruits with the cherries, because the cost of the harvest will be cheaper. Move on, please. So here we have the harvesting here in Brazil. On the first photos, we can see the manual harvest. In some areas, like I said, we use just manual labor, and they will push the fruits from the plant, and the fruits will fall. And in the third photo, we can see it's like a plastic, and in this plastic, they will separate the coffee. So it's how we harvest in mountains here in Colombia and in Central America. It's similar, but in those countries, they just catch the cherries. They select the red fruits. Here we harvest all of the fruits and separate after that. And the other photos is in areas that we can put machines, mechanized crops, mechanized fields. Here's our machines, our coffee machines. Here we will pass with the machine on the line, and inside the machine, like we can see in the blue machine here, we have an equipment that will make some vibration on inside the plants, and the fruits will fall. And the machine have a system with an elevator that will move the fruits to a specific store inside the machine, or to a place that will move, like we see in the first machine, will discard the fruits in other space. So this is the way that we use machines to harvest here. And one thing, a curious thing, because this kind of machines, these harvest machines, just exist in Brazil. In Vietnam, I think they are trying to use some kind of machines to harvest, but in Africa and in Central America, they don't use machines because they can't, because they plant on mountains. but here we can. So we are, this kind of operation are growing and growing day by day here. And here we have, after harvested, we need to dry the coffee. So we can use the sunlight to dry the coffee, or we can use the machine. This is a machine that with the fire, like the hot of the fire, and move the machine, they dry the coffee, or we can just put on the surface to the sunlight, make the job for us. And here in the last photo is my grandson on my uncle farms. Grandson, no, godson, sorry, in my uncle's farm with the coffee. So this is the management, like the general management inside the farm. Of course, after the farm, we have the roasteries. We need to roast the coffee, prepare the coffee, but we have a big industry, coffee industry, to prepare and to export. And after that, we drink at the coffee shops.
Well, I'm going to talk about now about some of the research we have in the college. So I'm a part of a group, and this group, it's like our job involves like laboratory, field, and greenhouse work, and we work with institutions, either public or private, and our goal is to be a reference in research, innovation, technology, working with everything is new in the market of the biocontrol of diseases in plants. And our purpose is to let these researches arrive to the producers. So this one is one experiment I'm leading, and these are like tomato seedlings, and they're right photo. We were planting that, and we were spraying some bio products, and these products were like bacilli and trichoderma, which one is it's a mold that in soybeans they live in association with the roots and increase the production, and even more, they helps with a disease called the white mold here. And I don't know if it's a common thing. It's more in a hotspot, but we are trying this kind of microbiological systems in other products to see if it works or not. So this is the start of the experiment. We were planning that. You can move on, please. So this was like 1 or 2 weeks ago. My tomato is getting bigger, and in the left photo, it's started the disease. This one is a septoriosis. It's a mold, and as we can see, right now it decreased a little bit the level of the appearance of this mold, but we are working to see if, which product is better and the testing. So you can move on to the slide, please. And we do the lab work afterwards, and we took the soil in the plants we planted and analyzed, like with these plates. I think you guys can see on the camera. Is it good? This is a culture media we made with trichoderma, and it was in the roots of the plant. So we can analyze how they are adapting to the plant and see if it grows the producing, if it makes more leaves, or what helps in the plant. You can move on, please. And just to finish off, this was my experience last year. I went to a farm and I lived there for almost 4 months, and I could see all the process there. So in the first photo on the left, we were applying the limestone so we could like have the calcium and magnesium and eliminate the aluminum in the soil. And one photo of the landscape. And in this farm in particular, the region I went, they have a lot of the integration of the plantation and the cattle. And the area they use for cattle 1 year, it's the area they use for the plantation next year, and goes on. So it's a really good system because the soil gets a rest, and you have a better conservation because you don't leave the cows and the cattle only one space and compress the soil. So this is just like a self-experience I could share with what I'm working with and what I work at. But I think that's pretty much. You can move on the slides. And this is the left one. It's where I and Vitor lives, and it's everyone who lives and lived here. So every year we have like a meeting with everyone who lives here and lived, because we are like a second family. And on the right photo, it's my actual family. It's my mom, but I think they're both pretty much my family.
Here's my family, my first family, and this is me in a coffee in a coffee crop.
Here, this is my family, my base for everything, and I in the field. Okay, thank you for watching. Questions?
Marceli,
Oh my God.
Vitor, and Tulio, well done. Well done. I learned a lot. I'm sure my colleagues would say the same. I would appreciate it if you could email us that presentation, because I think we need to put it in our Google Drive for other access. I learned a lot. I wish we had an hour or more, because I've probably got 1,000 questions I'd like to ask each one of you about what you presented, but we're sort of running with time again. So again, a big thank you for your effort to put this presentation together. Well done, really well done. And I think I'm just excited about the story you shared with us. Tulio and Vitor, this is in the state of Minas Gerais, where you are?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yes.
What's the city? Is it Paracatu?
No, it's Lavras. Paracatu is located on Cerrado Mineiro. Is other region, a big coffee region, but is the both regions are the biggest here in Brazil. Cerrado Mineiro and South Minas. But
Okay.
different regions, but in the same state.
Because the reason I brought up Paracatu, and I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but our Rotary Club's first exchange student was from Paracatu, and her name was Natalia. And I understand she's getting married this year. Yeah. So I want to move on here very quickly. Just appears that Ro has not arrived, and I don't know whether you young folks want to continue on. We can leave you in charge of it. We can leave one of you in charge, and then you can shut it down. Or if you just want to go, that's fine. But I did want to share with you a Rotary message, which resonates with me and my heart. And the first one is, does anybody here besides our Rotarians, do you know what the Rotary motto is? Anybody? It's service above self. And what that means is you do unto others first before yourself. So you try to make people's lives better. We try to give back to our local community, to the world where it's needs. We just learned this morning that our district put up a challenge to the Rotarians in our district in support of the Ukraine. And our district foundation committee offered up a match up to $30,000. Within less than 2 weeks, the Rotarians in our district contributed $30,000 for the people of Ukraine. And they decided to up it. So now it's at 40,000, and I suspect we'll get it. And then just yesterday, one of the families, a long-standing family in Calgary, just donated 100,000. So now we're at $160,000 that will go towards the people of Ukraine. And I can tell you this is happening all over the world. In fact, the Rotary Foundation has made a commitment. They've set up a special response fund for the people of Ukraine and Poland and the neighboring countries where there's reportedly 3 million refugees have left the country and are living in neighboring countries, and they need our help. So that's just an example of the service above self model, where people, this is what the Rotary family is all about. It's working together. We're better, we're stronger together. We are 1.2, 1.3 million people around the world in more than 200 countries. And so I would encourage you, when the time is right, to check out Rotary or Rotaract, and you'll be invited in like family. Janny has been a long-term Rotarian, as Marky and myself and Rob here tonight, and Wayne and Harvey and Wayne. But one other thing that resonates with me, and it's part of our guiding principles. So service above self, our motto, is one. The other one is what we call the four-way test. And if I had one wish, I wish I knew about Rotary earlier in life, because that four-way test, I use it almost daily. So if I have to make a tough decision, I ask myself, first of all, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? If you apply that to any tough decision, whether it's personal or work related, if you apply those 4 questions and you can answer yes to all of them, it's a definite go ahead. So I just leave you with that, and I'm disappointed that Ro is not here, but she must have got tied up, or we know from Thomas's experience, he's got no Wi-Fi today because of a storm. So do you want to just leave now? I'm fine with that. If that's, we're already an hour and a half into the program, and what do you wish to do, or do you want to just hang out? I'll leave one of you. I just need a signal. What do you want to do?